All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Clinician Executives webinar. I'm John Paul Croom. I am the president of ACHE of Georgia, and we have a very exciting program for you today. Our Clinician Executives webinar is entitled Elevating Healthcare Leadership, HR Insights for Aspiring Clinician Executives with Tony Welch. And before we get started, I'd like to make a few announcements. First of all, I'd like to recognize our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, our Atrium Health Navicent, Grady, Moss Adams, and Wellstar Health System. Our gold sponsors are Act Talent, Grant Thornton, Healthcare Program Advisors, Piedmont Healthcare, Northeast Georgia Health System, and Visia Technologies. And finally, our silver sponsors are DT Spade, Georgia Nurses Association, KCA Firm, Metro Atlanta Ambulance Service, SSR Inc., and Vivleo Health. Our upcoming meetings are displayed here, but the highlights include the highlights include our next in-person lunch and learn is at Maggiano's in Buckhead on May 16th, and registration will open later this afternoon. If you have not attended one of these meetings, it is a great way to network and meet with individuals before and after the meeting and eat some great food at the same time. Please visit the events page at www.acheofgeorgia.org for details and registration on this event and all events. To encourage members to take the Board of Governors exam, our Fellow Advancement Committee is offering an online archive of last fall's prep class for $50. Look for the details on our homepage. ACHE of Georgia offers several ways to stay connected through social media using Facebook, LinkedIn, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We'd like to invite you to get involved by serving on one of our ACHE of Georgia committees. You can contact ACHE of Georgia for more information. Today's program offers 1 hour of ACHE qualifying credit. And our topic again today is Elevating Healthcare Leadership, HR Insights for Aspiring Clinician Executives. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Jake Kesson, CRNA and Senior Director of Operations, Strategic Health Partners. Jake is the Vice Chair of our Clinician Executive Committee, and he is here to introduce our speaker. And with that, I will turn it over to Jake. Thank
you. Thanks, John Paul. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I see some people still trickling in. I won't take long. I'm just going to introduce Tony here. Our guest speaker is Tony Welch. He is involved in the Society of Human Resources, as well as a Human Resource Director at the Georgia Department of Public Health. He has a diverse background, comprehensive background, both non-for-profit and public organizations, and he's going to help us all get a little more comfortable with the human resources side of things. So without further delay, Tony, take it away. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jake. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for showing up here today. I know you have a lot of things that you can be spending your time doing, specifically work-wise, and I appreciate you deciding to spend some time educating yourself. I will tell you, as new leaders, young leaders, that what you are doing for your development by joining the American College of Healthcare Executives is a phenomenal thing to undertake. I am a former fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives. My background was basically all in acute care health. I've worked throughout the Southeastern Conference, as I like to say, from Kentucky to Florida, Alabama, Georgia. So over my 30-plus year career, I've served as high as Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer, several Vice President roles, and lots of experience doing just about everything you can in human resources. But I will tell you that despite my HR creds, I consider myself an HR executive, a healthcare executive who works in human resources, not a human resources executive who works in healthcare. And that's because you have to be, you have to have a bigger focus than just the job you're doing. And you have to find out how your role meshes with the entire organization's mission, vision, and values. And that has served me well throughout my career. And I recently retired as Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer from Phoebe Putney Health System down in Albany, Georgia, and decided to take a job here in Augusta with Georgia Department of Public Health. And I will tell you, and most of you will probably appreciate this, this is the first time in my career I've ever been able to park right outside my office. And so what a treat that is, instead of in a parking garage or offsite storage and taking a shuttle to work or things like that. So without further ado, let's get started. When I was asked to speak, we had a lot of conversations about, okay, we've got an hour, really about 45 minutes, because we want to allow you guys plenty of time to ask questions and get answers to your questions. So HR is obviously a very deep and broad subject that entails a lot of issues. And so trying to narrow it down to something that would be most helpful to you in the short run, something that you can take today and use tomorrow. So these are going to be practical tips and strategies for you to employ to deal with the most troublesome things that you will ever have to deal with as healthcare leaders. Before we get into it, I've got some rules of the road that I will ask you to follow if you can. And I can get them to populate. Yes. The first is be present. And what I mean by that is, if you can, turn off all other communication devices. If you can exit out of your email for an hour, that would be ideal so that you can focus on what's being said and presented here. The second one is to be patient. Everything in here may not be applicable to you, or you may have mastered what I'm talking about, but be patient. You will be able to pick up something from this presentation, I guarantee it. Even if it's, I never want to hear this guy speak again, right? So you will learn something from this presentation. Number three, be open-minded. If you want to be successful in your career, you have got to be open-minded. The things that helped you be successful, probably as a practitioner, before you got into management, are not the same things. It's not the same skill set. So you have to be open-minded and learn other ways of doing things, of motivating people, of doing things like that. Number four, contribute. And so we're going to ask that you pose questions in the chat, make comments in the chat, use your emojis and your icons. If you agree with something, you know, throw a thumbs up or a heart sign or whatever, just to let me know you're not dozing off, and that what we're talking about is something that you can relate to. Next is think. So as we go through this, and you're open-minded and entertain these thoughts that I'm sharing, make sure you do more than that, and that you think about them and their possible application in your life. specifically related to your relationship with your employees and how you lead. Next is incorporate. And so the things that you learn from this that you feel are valuable to you, make sure you incorporate those into your management toolbox. And that's what I call it whenever I pick up a new skill that I can use. And I will tell you, I pick up new skills from all over the place. Sometimes I pick up new skills from experienced managers. Sometimes I pick up ideas and suggestions based on my interaction with new managers. Sometimes an employee can say something profound that I can use in my management toolbox. So make sure you incorporate those things and drop them into your management toolbox to be used later. Next is to practice. So what you learn here, think about a time recently where you dealt with a similar issue, and based on the feedback that you receive here today, how you would apply these principles. And so role play that interaction back in your head, employing these tools, and try to figure out if that would have been helpful in this case. And the last thing is to master it. And the only way to master something is to do it, right? So once you do these things, you will be well prepared to employ what you've learned today in your management style. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get into it. Now, ACHG is a very academic, thought leader type organization. And like I said, it's invaluable to what you do. So learning the technicalities, the rules and regulations and things like that are very important and will serve you well. But this is a presentation that I recently created and did with my management team. And my management team is about 55 people, either in a manager, director, or senior leader position, over a 13 county district in East Central Georgia. And we have about 300 total employees that I'm responsible for from an HR standpoint. So we've got a much more practical, down-to-earth title that we used here. And that's dealing with gnats, burns, and coaching for better results. And I'll start with this. And I'd love to see some reactions to this. The biggest surprise to new managers is the amount of time they deal with employee drama. And one of the things I love to do is to chat with new managers after they've been in the job for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and ask them what surprised them the most. And without doubt, it all comes back to, I didn't know I would be dealing with so many interpersonal issues and personal drama and people not getting along with each other. So that's why I basically chose this topic for discussion today. So since managers tend to be picked because of their talents and skills, many lack the experience dealing with the interpersonal conflict and the drama that they have to deal with. On top of the interpersonal conflict and the drama between employees, you also have to deal with sometimes lack of motivation. A lot of times people don't have the natural talent that you have in doing the job. And so you have to do a lot of coaching. And with a lot of high-performing individuals who move into management, and that's probably the majority of who I'm talking to right now, it's hard to understand how someone is not motivated to do the best job they possibly can. It's hard to understand why they don't want to learn more and figure out better ways to do it. Early in my career, I was a new HR director, and I came into an organization, and I had a young lady that worked with me. She had been there for a while, and she did our payroll, and she was also an HR technician. And so I get there and I'm talking to her and I'm like, okay, well, I want to involve you in this, and this is a great opportunity for you to grow and learn this task so that you can move up with the organization and da 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 da. And I'll never forget this. She looked at me with disgust and said, Tony, let me be clear. I'm here to earn a paycheck. This is what I do. This is not who I am. So I'm not interested in any of that. And I didn't know what to say. I was just dumbstruck with that because I had never considered that everybody didn't feel the same way I did, right? About, being fulfilled at work and getting so much from your job. They just want to come in and do their job, and they do a good job, but they're not going to go outside of their comfort zone. They're not going to break a sweat, but they're going to do what's required of them, right? And that's going to be the majority of our employees. But we have to be comfortable with that and not try to change everybody to be like us. So I'm going to play, hopefully, we'll see if this works. I'm going to try to play this clip. And we'll see what happens.
He would not deserve to be at the table or anywhere near any of us for the way you treat us. Up until one of us has woken up in fear for this.
Okay. Are we back to my screen now?
Yeah, we're back. It was a little hard to hear that clip.
Okay. That's probably for the better. There was a lot of bleeping in that scene. And that's from the Real Housewives or Desperate Housewives or one of those shows. And it's all about the drama, of course. But that type of drama happens with your employees. And most of the time, you're not aware of it until it becomes so bad that you have to intervene. And by then, the damage is so severe that it's hard to rescue people and help them be successful. So don't let your employee drama create gnats. So that's what this is about. The faster you deal with the issue, the less likely it is to affect others' long-term morale, mentality, and productivity. So I have an acronym that I came up with to help our team deal with this. And gnats are giant, not all that significant issues that left unresolved can cause us to lose perspective. And they include frequent microaggressions or frustrations that accumulate over time and cause us to emotionally overreact to seemingly small annoyances. Have you ever had a situation where your spouse or significant other or coworker or friend or employees just lose it over something that you deem so insignificant, and you're like, wow, didn't expect that. What is their problem? Are you okay? Right? Have you ever reacted that way? I certainly have. But it's not that the time that it happened when you overreacted is why you're overreacted, right? It's because it's been happening over and over and over again, and it's built up until we can't tolerate it anymore. And so what do we tolerate on a daily basis that we have the power to control? Poor communications, bad behaviors, and allowing conflicts to linger. Those are some of the things that we have the power to control. So has anyone heard of the hot stove rule? It's an old HR axiom. And this was one of the first things I learned from a mentor when I joined in as an HR practitioner. And what happens when you touch a hot stove? You get burned. Who gets burned? Everyone who touches it. And when do they get burned? As soon as it happens, right? And the hot stove rule is basically a thing to remember when dealing with poor employee behavior. It can be attitude, behavior, performance, any of those things. You get what you tolerate as a leader, right? So if you let it slide today and you let it slide tomorrow, eventually it will typically get worse, not better. If someone brings an issue to you that they're feeling mistreated or judged or something along those lines, and it's not dealt with, then those slights are going to get more severe. I can't tell you how many times I've had employees come to me and they're like, I can't take it anymore. You've got to do something. I want to transfer. I'm going to quit, whatever the deal. And I'm like, well, what happened? Well, this is what happened. How long has this been going on? 2 years. 2 years? My goodness, no wonder you're so upset. Why did you let it go on for 2 years? Well, it was just easier to tolerate it than it was to do anything. And, you know, you justify it and all of that. So, but that's the hot stove rule. So if you get burned from a hot stove, what's the remedy for a burn? The remedy is ICE, and that's immediate coaching or counseling event. Again, an acronym I made up for my team that seemed to resonate with them as something that they could remember and utilize on a regular basis. And what ICE does is it asks that you deal with a situation as soon as it happens. It's a caught in the act approach for dealing with minor infractions, and it's to keep minor issues from escalating. It's not suitable for major investigations. If someone punches someone, if you've got a drug diversion issue or someone's impaired, obviously this is not for that. But it's for those microaggressions, those slights. It's for people who just, they're not quite meeting those deadlines, or you see that they interact with a patient or internal customer in an inappropriate manner. That's what you need to do. You need to call them aside and deal with them right now. Retrospective reviews are clouded by misremembering and justifications. And I'm talking about you misremembering and justifying. I need to talk to her about that. And you keep putting it off and you keep putting it off. And it's a week later and it's like, well, that wasn't so bad. You know, maybe she was having a bad day, or maybe somebody had, you know, was rude to him before it happened. You know, we just don't know what happened. So instead of allowing that to happen, you want to do something. And I had a mentor one time, and she was from China, and she had a saying that you eat the frog first thing in the morning. You don't put off the hard task. You get them out of the way so that you can be productive the rest of the day, so that you can get that win under your belt. So eat the frog first thing in the morning. As soon as you are made aware of the situation, especially if you witness the incident, you want to take the opportunity to correct the performance or behavior in real time. It keeps you from rationalizing the events, and it reduces your stress level from dreading a future conflict. Okay? How to apply eyes. You stop what you're doing and you turn your attention to the employee who is guilty of whatever infraction it is. If other people are present, you pull them aside. You don't do this in public. And you start the conversation something like this. Hey, John, I'm concerned about what I just saw, or I'm concerned with the way you handled that interaction or talk to that person, right? And you just pause there. And sometimes it'll take them a minute to realize what you're talking about. So you want to pause and allow them to absorb the impact of your statement. And then you want to give them an opportunity to respond. I will tell you that one of the most important tools in your management toolbox is silence. And if you can use silence as a strategic tool, you will be very successful as a leader. People abhor silence. They will do anything to avoid silence. So when you are comfortable in silence and wait for them to say something, then they're going to respond. And then you can, well, what do you mean? Well, then you can tell them. I could see the look on the person's face. And quite honestly, if you had talked to me that way, I would have been very offended. And, you know, can I ask why you handled it that way? What's going on, right? So you want to have that crucial conversation right then and there, okay? It's hard for them to say, oh, that's not what happened at all. You were there, you saw it, right? So it's hard for them to do that when you were right there and it's so fresh in their mind. Otherwise, they're like, oh, I don't remember it that way, or I don't remember that happening or whatnot. You're an eyewitness to it. So you're able to talk about that from that perspective. You want to ask questions and allow them to answer. You don't want to go in and say, well, the way you handle that situation was terrible, and I don't ever want to see you do that again. So you want to make them think about what they did and how they could have handled it differently. And then you want to explain why it was such a big deal. You know, you are affecting your ability to relate to that person in the future. Or what do you think they're going to go tell their colleagues about their interaction with this department based on the way you treated them, right? So you want to go through that and get them to answer and share feedback with you on that. But again, it's a coaching session because you're having a conversation. You're not just reading them the riot act. You need to tell them what'll happen if the behavior or performance is repeated. Basically, when these things happen, I'm like, okay, this is a freebie, but if this happens again, or I hear about this happening again, you know, we're going to have to start talking on paper, right? And ask them if they have any questions or need any help dealing with that, and ask them how they're going to make the situation right. I am not a proponent of requiring people to apologize, because a forced apology is worse than no apology. So you might want to say, now, if you want to make things better, I suggest you clarify yourself with them, starting with an apology, and you know what they say, never ruin an apology with a but, right? I'm sorry, but you were an idiot for asking me that, right? So you just want to apologize and say it was inappropriate, and what can I do to make it better? Okay. You want to keep your demeanor positive but assertive. This is your conversation. Don't let the employee take it over. And the way they take it over is they get defensive, or they might get emotional and start crying, because sometimes the biggest bullies are the people who can least take constructive feedback. And that's what this is. It's constructive feedback. And you want to end the conversation on a positive note, right? You don't want them walking away with their tail between their legs. You want to say, you're doing a good job overall, but I need you to watch your behavior when you're stressed, okay? And I hope we never have to talk about this again. So, ice chips. You want to make a note in your file about the encounter and how you dealt with it. A short narrative. On 2/6/24, Amber Hall told new employee John Wilson to disregard the blank policy and do blank the way she told him to. Discuss with Amber and she will correct this issue with John and apologize for the way she spoke with him. Follow up with John for closure. You always want to let the other side know, the quote unquote victim in this situation, that you did not approve of the way that was handled, and to please let you know if it ever happens again. Okay? And that's all you've got to say. You don't want to tell them, I really, gave her a hard time about it, or gave him a hard time about it, or whatever. You just want to say, if it ever happens again, let me know. And depending on your organization's progressive discipline policy, the short note may or may not be appropriate. But if it's truly a minor issue and you can give the benefit of the doubt, chances are it won't happen again. And if it does, you can pull this out and say, remember in February when I talked to you about this? Oh, I don't remember that. Well, I do. And this is where I made a note of it. Now we're going to paper because this can't happen again. So prior to using this technique, you need to figure out your coaching style in your own voice. You want to be genuine, so when something happens, you know how to start the conversation. So what I'm asking you to do is, in your mind, role play how you would handle this, okay? What are the words you would use? All of us in healthcare are familiar with scripting, right? And it sounds so mechanical and not genuine, right? So I'm not asking you to script this. I'm asking you to use your own voice to employ these techniques. And that's when it's going to be most effective. And it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert, or if you are assertive or you're more laid back. This will work for any leadership style if you're genuine to your leadership style. Here's some words of wisdom. Do not treat everyone the same. I know we all say that, right? But do not treat everyone the same. It is your job to flex your style to meet the needs of your employees, right? So I was trying to think of an example, an analogous example I could give. And the best example I could come up with is if you have several pets. Each one of your pets is going to have a different personality, right? So I've had dogs, I've had cats. I'm a animal lover. And some of the cats we've had have been very loving and want to be held all the time. And some of them are just like, I will let you know when it's okay to touch me, and I will tell you when it's not. And don't ever try to do it when I don't present myself to you in that manner, right? I'm sure some of you have the same thing. So if you run in and grab up one of your pets who doesn't like to be held, and if it's a cat, they'll scratch your eyes out, right? And if you ignore one of your pets that needs that love and attention and affection all of the time. So it's kind of analogous to that. So you need to treat the employee in the manner they're most comfortable with. You know, some of my employees, they don't want to be coddled. They just, if I do something wrong, tell me I'm doing it wrong and how you want me to do it. I'll salute and get back to work. And I do that. You know, my conversation is, hey, I just saw how you dealt with that situation, and I think there's a better way to do it. Oh, yeah? What is it? And I'll ask them if they can see themselves doing that. And, you know, it's a 5-second conversation, and it's done. And others, I have to be like, you know, you're doing a great job overall, but I did see, you know, and you have to meet them with kid gloves, right? You have to be very careful of their emotional state and whether or not they're comfortable in their job, and how secure they are, and things like that. So you have to be able to get the best out of each employee. All right, I'll stop preaching that. Always be conscious of the backstory. What is the backstory? So if you see an employee have a poor interaction with another employee, part of what you need to do is, what caused you to respond that way? How did that happen? Well, what you don't know is that this person has been, you know, calling me about this. I've shown them how to do it like 8 times, and they keep calling me about it. And it's just, they're helpless to do anything on their own. And I just got, okay, well, let's talk about what we can do to fix that, you know, and you work out a plan to solve that. You know, do we need to bring them in and do a one-on-one training with them? And do we need to ask somebody in their own department to help them with that? Do we need to send them a guide? Do we need them to be able to do 2 or 3 of them on their own, and things like that? So there are always ways to deal with that, but be aware of the backstory. Otherwise, you may be overreacting to a situation. Not that what they did wasn't wrong, but because of what we talked about earlier, right? Gnats. So again, you want to find out how and why the conflict started. You want to find a solution to the underlying issue, not just the present issue, okay? You want to be approachable so you can be a solutionist, right? So if someone's having an issue with something, you want to be able to be open-minded and have that open door policy so that they feel comfortable bringing something to you that they're not going to be made to feel foolish, or that they're wasting your time, or that you're going to get angry about it, or that you're going to start cutting them off and asking them a bunch of interrogatory questions, you know, instead of allowing them to present what they need your help with. If your team trusts you, they will come to you with issues before they become problems, right? So they will trust your ability to help them solve their issues. And lastly, your success is dependent on your ability to inspire your staff to excellence, hold them accountable for their performance, and lead them in a respectful manner. And you will never make everyone happy. 1 in 10 will find a way to be unhappy, and it may not have anything to do with you, right? Some people are just not happy unless they're miserable, right? I saw something on Insta the other day and it says, if you want to be popular, sell ice cream. And, you know, I can give an amen on that, because a lot of times what I do is not popular with a team. So you want to check in with your team. You want to be friendly and interested. Don't let the only time your team see you is when there's a problem, or that you're telling them how to do something or how not to do something. All right. In healthcare, rounding is a great idea, especially first thing in the morning before things get started, if possible. You know, hey, how was your weekend? You know, how was your day? Is everything going okay? Ask about them personally before you ask about them professionally. And ask for feedback whenever possible before implementing something new. And that's just common sense. You know, I can tell you early in my career when I would come up with an idea and it's like, oh, this is so brilliant. I don't know why this hasn't been implemented house-wide way before this. I must be smarter than everybody who's ever come before me. And, you know, I send out an email or something, and every nursing leader in the entire organization is either blowing up my phone or beating on my door, saying, well, have you considered this? Do you know what this is going to do? Or employees are pinging my email constantly about, well, what does this mean for me? Or, you know, I have this or I have that. And I never even considered that because I didn't know what I didn't know. So it's important to solicit feedback whenever possible. And become a solutionist is so important. I listed it twice. So if your team trusts you, they will come to you with issues before they become problems. And we're at about 42 minutes. So I was able to stay on target with the presentation time. And I really hope you guys have some good questions or comments for me. I'm looking forward to that. And I hope this was interesting and helpful to you.
Great job, Tony. Thank you. That was very informative to me. It made me think of a few things that I figured out quickly. One of the techniques that I started using as a manager and as a fellow colleague, since I'm both clinical and non-clinical, was that, first of all, most people just really want to be heard. It seems, in my experience, they don't even care if there's action or they don't expect action. So figuring out if action is even required versus just listening. Sometimes action makes things worse or can offend a person, but one of the tools that I would use is just to listen to them, be present with them. And then if something felt, I can't, just like we can't tell a patient their pain score, I can't tell someone what is or isn't safe or is or isn't appropriate to them. But if I felt like there was a gray zone, I would test the waters by acknowledging the way they feel and then asking them, you know, this is really serious. Will you email that to me and copy the CEO, or this is a big accusation. Please put that, you know, document it, is effectively what I'm saying. And I think 99.99% of those things just magically disappear when you ask for a paper trail. I didn't know if you had any experience with that or any other tools for diffusing or listening to people without escalating things further.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So you get two kinds of people. You get the ones that, you know, will come in and say, you know, okay, I want to tell you something, but can you keep it confidential? And I used to say, yeah, I can keep it confidential. That's my job. Well, now my answer, it depends. It depends on what you tell me. Because if you tell me something that's happening illegal or immoral, against the law, against our policies, or in any way immoral that's going to hurt the organization, I'm going to have to deal with it. So you be the judge of whether or not you want to talk to me. All I can promise you is that I will deal with it in the least intrusive manner possible, and I will do everything I can to keep your name out of it. And usually we can do that, but not always. Okay? So I give them a partial answer on that. Or they come and say, you know, my supervisor's a jerk and I don't know how long I could, but don't say anything about it. Okay, well, there's no law against being an ineffective leader. And if, you know, a lot of times my question will be after they share, just like you want to reflect back. I can see why that would be troubling to you, right? What can I do to help? All right. And you start with that. What can I do to help? And they will tell you what they want you to do. And most of the time is, I just needed somebody to hear me, or, you know, I don't know, what do you suggest? And I will try to give them options. And I will say, well, you know, if you're having a problem with your supervisor, I see one of three things we can do. We can ignore it. I can talk to your supervisor on your behalf and tell them how you're feeling, or I can help you have that conversation. I can coach you in how to have that conversation yourself with your supervisor. And I will tell you, I've used that twice in the past 2 weeks. And in neither case did those individuals want me to intervene directly. They're like, no, I'll handle it. And I spent, you know, 10 minutes kind of coaching them on how to bring it up. And, you know, you have every right to bring this up to your boss and just talk about, you know, what it's doing to you and how it's affecting your ability to be effective in your job, how it's making you feel, if it's making you feel less important or less regarded in your job. So excellent. I would, before going to that and say, put it in writing, I would ask, what can I do to help? And anytime if they try to get you to qualify an answer, you know, or commit to an answer, you need to give that caveat. It depends on what you tell me. I have an obligation to protect the organization. And so, you know, but I've never
Awesome.
had anybody walk away from that situation. Great question.
There's a few in the chat. I'll read you the first one. What do you do, or what can you do when someone you don't want to lose won't let you know what's going on, but is acting out?
Fantastic question. So what you do is apply ice, first of all. If they're acting out, you need to pull them aside, and especially if they're a great employee, and just tell them, wow, I did not expect that from you. Tell me what's going on. Instead of saying, you know, I'm unhappy with the way you handled that, maybe you go, you know, I said treat people different depending on the needs or the situation. Well, this is one where you would look at the situation and just, you know, pull them aside and say, tell me what's going on. You know, how can I help? You know, I've noticed a change in your behavior, and I've given you the space to deal with it because you've always been so good at your job. And obviously, I respect you and I want to keep you on the team. And what can I do to help you get through this? And so you just open up to them and let them know. So instead of attacking them, because what do people do when they're stressed? They shut down, they become immediately defensive. So to keep that from happening, you want to make sure that the last thing you do is go in with an on guard, right? What can I do? How can I help you? So that should disarm them enough that they will talk about it. And you know what? Sometimes what you do is you realize it's too hard for them to talk about right then. And you say, you know what? Why don't you take the day to collect your thoughts and let's meet tomorrow. Let's go on a walk tomorrow. Let's have a cup of coffee down at the cafe tomorrow. Whatever the situation is. try to keep it out of your power center, your office. All right, you want to do it in a more neutral location so you're not throwing the command structure in their face. You want to talk to them more one-on-one versus behind the desk.
Does anyone have any other questions? You can unmute yourself if you do.
Jake, I think there's another one on here from Jonathan Lee that followed that one about acting out. It's asking, has handling a variety of these HR issues changed the way you interview candidates specifically, or there are different questions you've started asking based on the issues you've handled?
That's very interesting. And in the past, well, even now, when an employee leaves, especially a leader, and I interview their supervisor, I ask them specifically, what are you looking for in your next leader? Whatever the top 2 or 3 things that they tell me are usually the top 2 or 3 things the predecessor was lacking and caused the major problems, right? And so that tells me a great deal about the situation. On the other side, if I'm a candidate and they say, you know, I'm interviewing and they say, well, we want somebody who has some business acumen. That means that the former HR executive didn't know squat about business and was not able to partner with the operators to help them deal with staffing issues and productivity issues and financial issues and things like that. So it's the same thing. So that telegraphs to me, you know, what those issues are. And but at the same token, those are important things to know. So you want to pose those as behavioral questions. You know, tell me about a time where you've been faced with someone who got in your face and you weren't supported by your immediate supervisor. How did you respond to that, right? Not how did you deal with, or what would happen if somebody did this. You want to put it in a behavioral setting in terms of how they've dealt with that or something as close to that as possible. That will kind of keep it from telegraphing that that is the issue that you're looking at. But certainly if you have got a department that is a little bit dysfunctional and eats their own, let me know if anybody's heard that before. You know, those are appropriate questions to ask because having the right fit is very important within your organization. And there's a way to structure those questions and ask them in a certain order so that it doesn't telegraph that, you know, wow, this place has got issues and I'm not sure I want to work here. I hope that answered your question. Anything else?
Thanks, Tony.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Any other questions? Hey, this is free.
Hey guys, this is Gina. I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Gina.
So I love what you shared. What do you see as HR's contribution to retention from coaching and leading leaders? Like, what is the biggest bang for your buck in the retention world?
The biggest bang for the buck is training the leaders. And that's why I've embarked on sessions like this with my organization, because there's been very little training provided to the leadership team. I'm doing these once every other month. The next session will be We're going to go through the progressive discipline policy because we've got a lot of leaders who have never been taught how to write those up. I've done one on HR investigations here recently that I've shared. So the first line of defense is the best line of defense. And in HR, we're used to being fire people, firemen, basically. We put out fires. We wait for for you guys to mishandle an issue, and then we swoop in with the hoses, and everybody knows we're there, right? And that the boss screwed up or didn't deal with something, or somebody got fired or something like that. I would rather prevent the fires. I would rather work behind the scenes to help the leader deal with these issues themselves, right? So that if you as a leader have an issue, you're knocking on my door, you're calling and saying, hey, I need some help with this. I've got an employee that's doing this or this and this. And if I do my job right, 99% of the time, no one's going to know that I was ever consulted, much less me going in and trying to rescue or fix something. So I will tell you that's the biggest frustration in my job when an issue's been going on for 6 or 8 months and we're not brought into it until the place is burning down. And then we have no ability to stay in the background. We have to go in and make changes. And it's like, wow, why didn't you just bring this to me? I could have helped you through this. But so many operators have been told that, avoid HR. They're like regulatory compliance. They're there to put you in jail or slap you down if you do something wrong. And, there's still some HR departments that may operate like that. But for the most part, your HR leaders and your HR business partners and generalists, their job is to help you. Their job is to be your consultant. I tell people my last name is Resource, and for them to use me that way, right? I'm like a computer system or any other tool that you can access. And you're welcome to my extensive library of hard knocks and experience. And you can take my ideas and suggestions. Very seldom do I ever insist that a certain path be followed. I will tell you, well, these are your options. I love giving people options. And then we'll talk about it. And then you'll decide, you know what, I think I want to handle it this way. Okay, do you need any help with that? Do you want me to role play that with you? How can I be of service? No, I think I've got it now. What's great is when those leaders come back and say, thanks for role playing that with me. It went great. I had a great conversation with the employee. I let them talk first. I listened to everything they had to say. I asked clarifying questions, and then I was able to modify my response to meet their needs and get what I wanted in return. Those are the best phone calls that I can get. So that's where the biggest bang for the buck is for me. If I have to get involved, that's a failure on the part of leadership overall. And I'm part of leadership. I'm your partner, so it's a failure of my part as well.
All right, one more question. If not, we're going to kick you back to John Paul. Anybody got any final questions or thoughts? All right, John Paul.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Tony Welch, we appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being leading our program. And thank you for all of you who also joined us today to listen in. Thanks also to Jonathan Lee, our Physician Executives Committee, for organizing today's session. And thank you to our sponsors as well. We appreciate all that you do to provide leadership for the healthcare industry in Georgia. And as a reminder, please be sure to complete our meeting evaluation, which will be emailed to you later today. Your survey will really help us as we strive for continuous improvement in the content of our education programs. So if you enjoyed it, let us know. It really helps us design how we're going to do this over the next year. We be sure to also self-report your 1 hour of qualified education credit on the ACHE website. I hope everyone has a great afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our one of our upcoming events. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
See y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.